Welcome back, Steeler fans, to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith of Smoking on the message boards, joined by my colleagues, Corey Karbowski, you know him as Corey39, and Will Massasek, you know him as Bradshaw to Ben. Gentlemen, 2 back-to-back wins. What the hell's going on here? What we are doing is playing ourselves out of that top draft pick that we thought we were cruising for. But nonetheless, it is nice to see the team win. Nice to see some positivity around the team, if you ask me. Just with how bad the season started out, we all thought it was going to be doom and gloom all year long. But Kenny Pickett is starting to kind of turn heads a little bit. What do you guys kind of think of Kenny's performance this past week?
I mean, Will can correct me if I'm wrong because, I mean, he watches it kind of how I do, but I don't think he had one turnover-worthy play. Which one was?
Did.
Or
he had
the
Deontay Johnson knocked one out of the defender's hand.
Yep, the go route.
And he also had one that was going to be a pick, except for he realized that as he was letting go of the ball and threw it into the ground.
Yeah, I forgot about the Deontay one. But I think there's been great strides in his overall decision-making since he first started. I mean, I've been a bit of a Kenny Pickett doubter. I still am to a pretty large degree, I'd say. But I mean, all you can ask for, especially in a rookie season where he got thrown in the way he did, is for improvement every week. And I think we're seeing that from him. Now, still the question of how big his ceiling is, or how tall his ceiling is. But I mean, I think you can't ask for too much more than what he's done so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I'm less enamored with his lack of turnovers and decision making than I am with the fact that he has managed to make some vertical throws. Like I'm not worried about him throwing 50-yard bombs. I just want to see him be able to attack down the field a little bit. It's still, the numbers are still not particularly good in that regard, but I do feel that's improved. I worry about this, combination of the head coach and the offensive coordinator for this team, basically taking all of the spirit, breaking him essentially by, keeping him from making dangerous throws and trying to push the ball downfield to the point where he not only hasn't thrown an interception in forever, but has barely thrown any touchdown passes either. Right. So I'm just a little concerned with what this year to me needs to be for him, which is he needs to be able to see where the limits are, so he needs to be able to see where the limits are, figure out what he can't do at this point in his career, and figure out how to overcome some things that he gets. If he makes a mistake, figures out what to do to correct it, or that it's something that he just won't be able to get away with. And so I think we're going to learn more from him when he fails. That's a succinct way of saying it. We will learn more about him as a quarterback from how he fails rather than how safe he can play, right? How safe he can play probably is a good thing to do against mediocre teams that can't do anything against the Steelers defense. Even if the Steelers defense isn't tip top, they're plenty good enough to shut down, Marcus Mariota and the Atlanta Falcons, right? So we're not really learning anything by Kenny playing the way that he needs to play to win that kind of game. Like, it doesn't make any sense to push the ball down the field or take any chances when your defense is throttling the other team. But we're also not learning as much as we could be, and he is not growing as much as he could be.
Yeah, I would agree. Will, you made a good point that he had that one deep overthrow to Freiermuth that looked like that was going to be going for a sure touchdown if that had been on the money. So it's nice to see those things, that he's trying those things. Like you said, he's trying to push those limits. As a former future Hall of Famer quarterback, Big Ben would say, he's a little more John Wayne in his game.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like if you want him to really give you a chance at a championship and to play well in the postseason, I mean, there's two things for me. One is we got to see how much of that gunslinger spirit he can muster when he needs it, and be able to deliver on that would be amazing if he could do better at it. And then I do think that there's a little bit of a mechanical thing going on with him where he understands he doesn't quite have the arm to lollipop those up and over throws. So throws over the first level and in front of the deeper level of the defense in the intermediate range. This is stuff that he's having some trouble with. And you can tell that his way he's trying to compensate for it right now is to put a little bit more on it. But because of his mechanics and trying to overthrow the ball, it's sailing, a lot on these kinds of throws. So that's the kind of stuff I'm seeing. Like, there's lots of good stuff to see. Like, I think he has now sort of achieved a stasis in his game that's similar to what I expected coming out, which was he will look polished and he will look totally unfazed by being able to step in and do a lot of the basic stuff, the easy throws, if the defense plays 12 yards off, he can throw a 9-yard, stop route underneath that and be pretty accurate with it. He can roll out and make some good throws. So all that stuff that I thought he'd be good at, he's demonstrated he can be pretty good at that. I just feel like at some point defenses start to adjust to you. They start to realize what's a challenge for you, and they'll push you into things that you're not as comfortable doing. I would prefer to see more of that faster, but I'm a little impatient with him. Yes, Corey's right. He's played better, cleaner football, and that's progress. And progress is, definitely job one. But progress at doing the stuff that's really special, or attempting to do things that are developing beyond that, is definitely job 1A.
I think it kind of sounds like you're talking about a backup, Will.
No, I think I'm talking about Alex Smith. Alex Smith is a really good starter. I mean, to me, I thought that was my expectations for Kenny Pickett, is that he would be a good starter for a time. That would be too good to get rid of until you realize what his limitations are. And then you'd have to get lucky. You'd have to, rather than invest a high pick necessarily in somebody, you'd have to maybe find a guy who is just, you thought was coming in as a backup, it turned out to be better than him. That would be Mike White, the Mike White scenario in New York. Or you finally realize as it gets towards the end of the time where you're going to have to pay him big money, that you're better off investing. So, a quarterback fell in your lap like Patrick Mahomes, and you're like, we have to take him because, I'd rather invest in the future with this guy than invest in the guy we know has the ceiling. But yeah, I think he could potentially be as good as Alex Smith. Alex Smith was a fine regular season quarterback who even had occasionally enough to win with a good team in the postseason, but that doesn't mean it's good or bad. I'm not making a judgment or trying to say that as a pejorative. I'm just saying that's what it seems like to me, is that thing where you don't throw any picks, as the central thing that you can hang your hat on. That's very Alex Smithish to me.
Yep. So, we have seen some progress from Kenny. Some other things we saw some progress with again is, Pittsburgh was able to run the ball again for a third consecutive game. I know Atlanta doesn't have a good defense by any means, but it was just nice to see the running game. Najee Harris running incredibly hard. I think he took that, benching to a degree. About a month ago now, when people were really talking up Jaylen Warren out of the bye week, I think he took that to heart, and we've seen a completely different running back since then. It was nice to see Deontay Johnson a little more in the pass game this weekend. We couldn't believe he got more than 4 targets. It was amazing. He generally did some nice things and actually ran north and south for a change instead of trying to go east-west all the damn time. But that kind of leads me to my next question for you guys. Definitely saw a little bit of frustration from George Pickens in this past game, notably so. Obviously, he wants the ball. He wants to go make plays. Do you see this as a disturbing trend already in his rookie year?
So I had probably an hour-long argument with my dad about this. I don't think this is an issue at all. He's a competitive guy. I think if you look at probably over 3/4 of the teams in the NFL, if one of their top 2 receivers got what George Pickens received in terms of targets and looks last game, they probably would have been saying stuff too. I don't think it's not like he was kicking over coolers. It's not like he's like throwing his helmet everywhere. He said, "Throw me the effing ball," after Deontay Johnson pitches the ball forward. I think it's a reasonable reaction from him. It's a little immature, but he's a rookie, and he's not an especially old rookie. So, I mean, I'm sure that behind closed doors, Tomlin had to talk with them about it, but I don't think it's an issue at all. I think there's plenty of receivers that would have reacted the same way. I don't think it's out of the ordinary.
Gotcha. It did seem like there were some veteran players that had kind of come over and talked to him. I think Cameron Hayward came over and talked to him at one point. Will, what are your thoughts on?
Oh, I tend to agree that it's not like it's been overblown into something. And I understand from his standpoint that from the beginning of his Steelers career, they haven't really, they haven't fed him the ball. They haven't sort of built a game plan about trying to get it to him. And they're playing a quarterbacks, or for that matter, earlier we're playing, Trubisky as well. Quarterbacks are not really into like building some chemistry with him to throw him the ball even when he's covered, or to give him some other routes to run where he'll be more open. So it's like they're not exactly catering anything to him. And you get a game like Sunday where they're having success running the football, and they're going to run the football a lot. Yes, he doesn't mind blocking, but if you're, the NFL, if you got wide receivers who are really willing blockers and are, accept that role and dive into and are really great at it, you got to give them a couple of plums once in a while, right? That's the way it works in the NFL. It's like if you're the point guard, you got to give everybody some touches in the game, whether you're going to feed them over and over again, it doesn't matter, but you got to make them feel like at least that they're important, so that when you do need them, that they're not bailed on you. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. It's like, yes, he doesn't need to be reacting that way just because he's frustrated, but I understand he hasn't really been utilized. I would say he hasn't been utilized to the level of his talent to this point, but that's a function of a lot of factors on the team that he has no control over. So if it's something you have no control over, there's no reason to be frustrated about it, really. But that's one of those things that when you're 60, it's a lot easier to say than when you're 22 or 23, whatever it is. So
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, Pittsburgh has, in their history, one of the best blocking wide receivers of all time in Hines Ward. And, you look at his numbers, he caught 1,000 balls in his NFL career. So, I mean, you're definitely right. You do need to, get that guy the ball, even if he is doing such a great job blocking. So that's a good point there. Kind of last thing I'll bring up on the offense, Pat Freiermuth continues to be an ascending weapon for this team. He has done a remarkable job receiving. I think I kind of saw him when he came into the league. I didn't see him quite as such a big receiving threat, as more of a positional receiver, but I mean, he's been able to run away from some defenders, and I think that we got to give that guy some credit. I mean, he's leading the team in receptions and yards this year, if I'm correct. And if statistics remember correctly, when I was looking at this earlier, there are only 2 tight ends that have had 5 70-yard games or better this year, I believe. You can guess that number one.
Multiple. No, it was the number of 70-yard games. I think Freiermuth had 4, and the only other guy is Travis Kelce, who has multiples, and he has like 7.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I just would say it definitely helps to have a quarterback determine that you are his safety blanket. So right away, he gets opportunities because the quarterback's looking for him, right? So, and if you do well, the quarterback looks for you more, and all that kind of stuff. If you go back to me talking about Pat Freiermuth on social or on this podcast here, but when we were in the draft time when he was coming out, here's what I remember saying. I thought his best abilities were, as a blocker on the move, he was excellent at finding the target and hitting anybody smaller than him. He just wiped them out. And there aren't that many guys at his size, 250 or 260 or whatever he is, who can get to a smaller, more nimble target and block them in the run game. And I felt that he was extremely good at that. I don't think he was in college a very good leverage blocker against somebody bigger, or trying to deal with somebody even his own size. But the smaller targets on the move is great at, and that's something he has been excellent at. Part of the reason that probably the most impressive thing about the offense to me is the way that the run blocking is going since the bye. More than even the runners, the run blocking has been very good. They have almost no stuffs where plays are killed in the back at the line of scrimmage or in the backfield, until maybe they get in some of that 4-minute offense where the other team is literally like stacking the line and knows they have to run. And even then they've still been able to run effectively. And a big part of that is that everyone has to meet their blocking assignment, from the wide receivers to the tight ends to, fullback to the offensive line. And I feel like Freiermuth has been a really big part of that, because they're asking him to do stuff that he's really good at, rather than asking him to do the things that he's not as good at, right? So there's that. That's great. As a receiver, what I said about him in the scouting report that I think has held up pretty well is he doesn't have the burst to immediately get past the linebacker level and be a real threat up the seam. But what he's great at is outbreaking routes. He is, as someone pointed out this week, and I've forgotten who it was, Corey might remember, his ability to sink hips at the point of break point on outbreaking routes where he has a little bit of leverage on a linebacker or a safety, they can't cover him. And that's been the most of his juice the last couple of weeks. And even on his big gainer, that was it. It was just like he had the slightest little bit of leverage on a linebacker. He kind of at the break at the top of the route kind of leaned into him ever so slightly and then broke out quickly and gained 3 yards of separation. So by the time he got the ball, he could just turn upfield and run. That's an excellent skill to have. And now additionally, the fact that he's so much trouble for them on outbreaking routes, he's even managing to get open up the seam because they're linebackers especially are like cheating leverage on him for these outbreaking routes, and so he can just nod to them and go up the field. And even though it takes him a while to build up speed, he's still managing to get a lot of space on routes like that. So I've been very impressed with how, more than anything, how the offense has adapted to what he's good at over this year compared to last year. They're having him do stuff that suits his skill set, and he's doing a great job with it.
So Corey, I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but I'm going to jump in here real quick and kind of pose a question on top of that. So since the bye, we've ran the ball better. We've pass blocked better, in my opinion. We've been doing things that have suited this team better. Does Matt Canada deserve some praise at this point?
No.
Well, that was a very short answer.
He's playing. Come on, guys. The teams they have played have either not been very good defensively or have been really off their stride defensively. It just doesn't feel like I don't feel like they've really done it against an opponent that was rolling defensively. But maybe I'm mistaken in that. Like the closest I could think it was Tampa's got a good defense, but they seemed so out of sorts when the Steelers played them. But these other teams, man, Indy looked terrible that night. Like they were mailing it in, and the Falcons are just, they played defense. I said to Corey during the game or on the board during the game, it looked like a preseason game. The way they were playing defense was like they're like a thud period in preseason where they're not even really, interested in hitting anybody. So yeah, it's like I kind of want to see them, this weekend, not just do well and or even win the game, but like I would like to see them be impressive in attacking a team that maybe they're not the greatest defense, but the Ravens always play hard.
Mm-hmm. Until we properly utilize talent, then I really don't give a rat's ass about Matt Canada. George Pickens with 1 target at the half, and Deontay Johnson, it's been a consistent issue with not getting targets. It just feels like, I get the O-line isn't great, but I feel like with the talent that we have, it's been, outside of the Bengals game, an underperformance every single game offensively. So I feel like if you're not elevating your players, then you should be looking to upgrade. And I feel like he actually negates those. One of those are right. Feel like he makes our players worse in the context of our offense.
I don't know, Jeremy. It's like these wins are basically, this is the thing about people who are like happy that the Steelers are winning and just some good energy for their players who were, was really going bad earlier in the year and they're winning now. Something you said earlier, but I think what's really happening is you're justifying to Mike Tomlin that his approach and the decisions that he makes are the right decisions, that their use of the talent is the right talent, and the Matt Canada should keep his job. Like, that's what's really happening. They are the players by reaching something approaching mediocrity in their record are basically justifying everything that the organization believes about itself. So if you're like me and you think, I feel like there's certain things the organization does very well, but they need to they need to have a come to Jesus moment to do some things that are going to make them able to be contenders for a long time again. And I feel like we just get further and further from that with winning close games against mediocre teams. Like, I'm just not sure that really, unless they're just going to flip a switch and become a playoff team suddenly, that it's rough to think about the long-term implications of what's happening, because I do think it keeps Matt Canada's job.
For you Steelers fans out there, what you couldn't see when we were talking about there, I posed that question with a big smirk on my face, types of answers, and I'm glad we got these types of answers, because I think both of you are spot on. We're playing some inferior opponents. Yes, I mentioned it's nice to see, the team have some success here and there, but like,
it is
doing it against some bottom feeders in the league. Was that same crap, that we said about Minnesota to start the year. Ooh, they had some big wins over the worst teams in the league, at the time. And I feel like we're doing the same thing right now. So yeah, God forbid. I'm going to be the one that gets a little more emotional here. You guys were too monotone about that. I'm going to be the one that gets emotional here. There is no damn way in hell Matt Canada should be back next year. But that is, what's being floated out there in the Twitterverse right now. And I think people are becoming tone deaf just because we were winning a few games here, and a few players are having some nice games here or there. But all the problems are still there. Dan Moore is still a C when it comes to, a legitimate edge rushing presence. He hasn't seen that in a few weeks. I mean, Yannick Ngakoue, I think, was the best rusher he's faced in the last month of football, and he's good, but he's not great, in my opinion. So let's not kid ourselves to a degree. Like I said, it's fun because, we get to say, we win a few games here or there, but let's not kid ourselves. We do have a lot of issues that we still need to work out going into next year. And God forbid if that fool Matt Canada is there, that would just be the cherry on top of this season.
But when teams, you hear announcers talk about teams, they should go for it on fourth down. They got nothing to lose this season. What are they worried about? Punting the football. They're 2-8, whatever, right? They say that kind of stuff, right? I mean, I could see this being an opportunity, not just to, let the players play and find out what they can do, which is a huge part of every season, evaluating that you don't usually get to do because you're worried about your Super Bowl chances. But, I don't, is there somebody in that building who when the cameras are off, who actually believes that they're a candidate to win the Super Bowl this year? Like, I don't know, even the players that are on that team, I'm not sure they really think that,
I don't know. All I'm going to say is, if you're a fan, don't stop Mike Tomlin in a tunnel and ask him about winning the game, okay? He's effing working. So
anyway, all I was trying to say is, I don't think winning is bad. I'm not saying that they should tank, but I feel like now's the chance to try some analytics, try doing some stuff that's outside your comfort zone and see if you can stretch yourself to get better. Like, that's what the season should be about. Like, let's see what we can do to get better. We're going to try some stuff we don't usually do. We're going to work at some things that are our weak points, and we're going to try to get out there and do stuff that's outside of our comfort zone and do it well and get better, so that when we have better talent and we don't have fewer injuries or whatever, that we'll be able to be a better team than we would have if we just keep doing the same thing. Because I feel like if this team gets anywhere near 500, even if they get to 7 wins, that people are going to talk about what a great coaching job it was. There won't be any wholesale changes, and there won't be anything different about their approach. They're not going to be worried about trying to get better, other than just next year is another year and we'll reload and we'll just keep going.
Right.
So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I was just looking at some stats. So we know we're going to get to this matchup. This is against the Ravens this week, which is, maybe no Lamar Jackson. Then we are at the Carolina Panthers, who have a okay defense. They're about 16, but
same as the Steelers right now.
Very bad offense. We play the Raiders, who are a bottom 7 defense. We play the
They
Browns.
might be the worst defense in the league. They were close 2 weeks ago. I think they were the worst in DVOA. Yeah.
We play the Ravens again, so that might be a game we lose, might be a game we win. And then we play the Browns again, who have the worst rushing defense in like 40 years or something like that. I think it was since the 1980s. So you do math on that. We have 5 games left, and 4 of them look like we should probably win if we play solid. And we are 2 games behind 500 right now. Just some food for thought. I don't think we can make the playoffs. We're 4 games back right now. But for any tanking talk or any draft pick hopes, I could easily see us ending up with a 9-8 record and just out of the playoffs, but right there for a sweet 22 draft pick.
I don't know. I feel like when you're as young and inconsistent as they are on offense and have been over the course of the year, that you're going to win some games against the Atlantas and the New Orleanses of the world, and then you're going to inexplicably lose some of those games too. Like, it's just, those are all sort of 50-50 games to me, especially with TJ Watt playing like at what seems to be about 70% right now. So I wouldn't count on any of those easy victories being easy, and or victories for that matter. And I also wouldn't count on, it feels like we're going to lose, all the division games left, but that doesn't mean that they're going to. So yeah, I mean, that's scary, but yeah, it just feels like they're going to end up in the 20s again, and just like, oh my God, after all of that start, you're not even going to be able to get the benefit of getting some really superior player to add to the top of that pile.
Well, you're forgetting one fact. Tomlin's never been below 500.
I already say that is still very much a possibility, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I was kind of hoping, I mean, to me, the sort of ideal situation would have been to end up with 5 wins, because that would be the Steelers' worst record since 1969. Since the 70s, in the Super Bowl era. And that to me would be like an eye opener for like, okay, maybe we've got to do something different, but I think they'll, this sort of justifies how they, more or less neutered Ben's last couple of years with the offensive plan that they had. And, this is what they were after. We're trying to have a young running back. That's why we picked him in the first round. Like all the decisions that they made that I think are super questionable decisions long-term for the franchise, or even drafting Kenny Pickett in the first round, like they're going to feel justified about all those things, whether they work out in the long term or not. There's not going to be any short-term reaction to that. And, it is what it is. It's like, I may have just, I think I may have reached a point now with it where I'm just, there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm just going to roll with however they are, but I'm not emotionally invested in winning the same way I was. And I realized that I thought to myself, well, why is that? Because you have to have the belief that that it matters for them winning the championship or not. Like if it gets down to the last second in the game and you think if they can win enough games this year, like they get in the playoffs, like they could have a shot. They got at least a puncher shot in the playoffs. Then like I'm totally emotionally invested in it, but I haven't felt that since the beginning of the year. So I apologize for that. For those of you who listen to the show and would like me to be more enthusiastic about the winning and whatever. I don't know. I would like I said, to see something different in an effort to try to get better. That's all I'm really after.
Yeah, I think we can all, kind of agree with that sentiment to a little bit. We know this team's not going far. So, winning winning and losing this year doesn't have the same gravitas, that, this team had when it had a Big Ben, when we knew we could do anything with that guy. We just don't have that factor anymore. And I think it's pretty safe to say that. Even defensively, we're not quite what we used to be. Might be getting a little closer, but still work to do there too. Well, you said it best. I think TJ Watt's playing at like 65%. You said 70. Couldn't agree more. There were a few times this past Sunday where I looked and I was like, yeah, that's TJ, but I don't see the same, spryness, and part of that's, coming off the injury and everything. And then he's
and the ribs.
Yeah, that's Barry say having to wear a rib protector for the first time in his career this Sunday. So, he's banged up a little bit. Ogunjobi got banged up a little bit. Okorafor, I think it was a shoulder during the game, but he returned to play action. All of them are going to be limited this week, but all are still expected to play this upcoming week. So real quickly, guys, any last thoughts on this Atlanta game before we move forward? Perfect. Let's move forward to the other dirty bird that is on the schedule this week. That would be our most hated rival, or at least one of them, the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are headed to Pittsburgh without Lamar Jackson. Corey, you made a great point. That is a huge difference maker in this game with Tyler Huntley. We kind of Steeler fans, we kind of had in our text group beforehand kind of the opinion that Tyler Huntley, who is going to be replacing Lamar Jackson this week, is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. I'll let you two kind of start off with this because you guys kind of started this conversation between us. Well, what makes Tyler Huntley one of the better backup quarterbacks in this league?
I'll start. So he's decisive. That's one thing. So he's a great scrambler. Like, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean he doesn't hold the ball in the pocket. But when a read's there, he's not one of those guys that kind of holds on to it. He'll get the ball out. Now, I mean, these are the worst weapons the Ravens have ever had. So it's going to be a question of how open these guys can get. I mean, he still has 2 tight ends. Is the injury report out for Mark Andrews? Do you know?
I didn't see anything.
No, I previewed that. Looks like Mark Andrews is relatively healthy. He was not on the injury report I was looking at. Injury report real quick. I'll just dive into that real quick. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, very unlikely to play.
So by the way, I have it on good authority that the initial fear from the training staff was that he has a torn LCL, but they just weren't sure if it was torn to the point where he can continue to play eventually or not without surgery.
Gotcha. And then the other two kind of bigger names out there, Patrick Queen, he's questionable.
He's always questionable.
Yeah, his play's questionable too. So, but the other bigger name out there, this was potentially a target week for Ronnie Stanley to return to the lineup. They mentioned him as questionable, that this was kind of a goal for him to be back for this game. Whether that happens is still questionable at this point. So Ravens, I would probably be, pretty confident saying it'll be unlikely. I think he plays. I think this was the earliest they projected him to be back. I can't remember exactly what that injury was, but it's held him out here for a while. So I think you're going to see Patrick McCarry back at left tackle, which is great news for Pittsburgh. But Corey, sorry, keep diving into the Tyler Huntley stuff.
So yeah, he's decisive. He's a great scrambler. I mean, they can keep the same exact offense. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are 2 guys that are big bodies who can get open. And so he'll have 2 guys to throw to still. And I mean, he does what they want him to do. I mean, I think he would succeed in any system. I mean, as being what we're talking about, he's just a good quarterback. But I mean, they don't just have to change a thing. It's not like they go into this week and they have to revamp the playbook for him. I mean, this has happened before. He's taken over. He's played well. But
I mean, go ahead.
I'm going to get to the matchup with him after Will goes, because that's one of my matchups to watch, because I have some stats for us.
I got you. To me, the thing that makes him a great backup is, legitimately one of the best backups is the ceiling of what he can do when he's on. So the thing about backups are, if part of the reason they're backups is maybe some inconsistency. They're not necessarily somebody's going to go out there and do it 10 weeks in a row or every game in the season or for 5 years in a row or whatever. But I think Hundley's experience has been that he is when he's played well, man, he has been really good. I think it was the Green Bay game that he played last year. That was, in terms of making big plays on third down and tough throws, running the football when needed to, clutch plays in the red zone near the end of the game, etc. He was like, Lamar Jackson good for a week. So to me, that's the thing with him is, like the last time they played against the Steelers, I want to say that the Steelers won 16-13. Is that what happened? Pretty sure that was the result.
Yeah,
in
it was definitely
overtime,
a close
right?
game. Mhm.
Yes,
He
16-13.
He didn't play all that well, but I think it would be a mistake to think that that's like who he is in general, because I felt that was like sort of one of the poorer games he's played. So unless there's some peculiar thing the Steelers have figured out about playing him, like the way they have sort of figured out how to play Lamar Jackson, I don't necessarily, he's not necessarily the threat that Lamar Jackson is at any given moment to make a big run. But I also feel like he is in a way better decision maker than Lamar Jackson sometimes. And at his peak, he's capable of beating anybody.
Gotcha. Corey, why don't you just go right into the matchups, because that's where we are headed next. We start off with Tyler, don't we?
Yeah, so I have Hundley versus Edmonds because, as I mentioned earlier this year, I can't remember if it was in a pick segment or if it was when we were playing another running quarterback, but Edmonds has historically been one of the keys to shutting down the Ravens offense. I mean, we've had figured out like no one else. I mean, even in the playoffs, they'll put up points, but the defense hasn't been able to hold. Against us, Tyler Huntley had it 141 yards, 2 interceptions, and he was 16 for 31. And the reason why I buy into that is because we have consistently also negated Lamar Jackson's numbers. So Lamar Jackson has never had like as good of a game against us as he has against practically any other team in the NFL. And I mean, yeah, it's a more physical game. Box gets tighter. Guys are playing harder. But I really believe Greg Roman's a great run game coordinator, but as an overall play caller and especially pass game designer, he is bad. Like, he is not very good. He's outstanding in creating running concepts. But outside of that, there's a reason why his stuff doesn't work beyond the regular season. So I really believe that we have something figured out about them. And I think that it partially has to do with Terrell Edmonds being a ridiculously good spy, going sideline to sideline and being able to contain these quarterbacks in the run game and not forcing us to add extra numbers in the box.
Sure.
Yeah, well, to me, the matchup is it's close to that. It's the Ravens tight ends against the Steelers defense. The difference between last year's matchup and this one is Isaiah Likely. I mean, he is the best. I mean, this is the best 1-2 combination they've had at tight end, maybe ever since they've been a contending team. Starting in the mid 2000s. I can't remember them ever. They've always had some good tight ends, but I don't ever remember them having 2 receiving threats that were this good, and a quarterback that can get it to them, right? So if you have Edmonds working on spying the quarterback, and you have one tight end, maybe Minka can focus on a guy, but then you're basically down to some of the Steelers' weakest defenders to be able to defend him in the second tight end in the passing game. So I feel like you're going to get a lot of play action because that's what they do better than scheming up 5 wides or any of that kind of stuff. So you're going to get a lot of play action, and you're going to get a lot of looks to the number 2 tight end and the fullback. And that's what they'll just keep doing that until, they wear you down so you then get weak against the run or whatever. And we have managed to really slow them down from being able to get the ball to their wide receivers and to even slowing down the quarterback runs. But I'm very concerned about the middle of the field coverage situation with these 2 tight ends.
Yeah, shoot, you're worried about their coverage. I'm concerned about the running game. I mean, our linebackers have to take on Patrick Ricard. I mean, that dude's a load. 6'2", 305 pounds at a fullback spot. I mean, that's a tough assignment for anyone, and he's nimble enough to hurt you in the pass game too if you choose to forget about him. You don't see it very often, but he's a plus athlete. So I mean, just whether it's Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, Miles Jack, those guys have to be willing to come down and pick him up early. You cannot let that bowling ball get any momentum, because that is a guy you do not push back once he gets
Did he?
you do not want to be
right
that safety that comes up.
Am I right that when they had some kind of offensive line injuries, I think he played right tackle for like half a game this year?
Dude, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. I mean,
and it was like, and he was pretty good if I recall correctly. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you look at this dude's measurables, you think he'd be like a center or a guard on this team. I mean, it's ridiculous.
He blocks like one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He walks like one, also with a W.
Last thing I will say about what the Steelers defense does have to do is, while the Ravens do not have great receivers, they do have great speed at receiver. We do have to respect the speed of Demarcus Robinson, Dever Duvernay, Deshaun freaking Jackson. I don't know how many teams he's going to get on before that guy finally retires, but I mean, he had a big catch. I don't think it was this past week, but the week before, where he had like a 60-yard catch still, and it's like, man, that dude still has juice at least. So I mean, we do have to watch this play action stuff. Will, I think you're the one that pointed that out. If we get too concerned with those tight ends, those receivers can run right by us too. Steelers are going to be down on Kel Witherspoon, I think, for the rest of the season. They put him on IR. I think it was yesterday, if I remember reading correctly.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
that might help us.
Might help.
Well, it could bring somebody else, put somebody else on the roster. Yeah. Hey, just one quick thing about the deep ball to Deshaun Jackson and Al is, the guys like that are so fast that you have to have a quick decision maker at quarterback to get him the ball. And one thing about Lamar Jackson is, he has the arm, he can throw it through a wall and throw it 60 yards downfield. But, I think he tends to not make those choices quickly, which is one of the reasons they don't get a lot of deep ball action with their wide receivers. And Huntley, there are many things he doesn't do as well as Lamar Jackson, but in a way, he feels like a guy that is capable of hurting you deep if you leave guys available there, because he makes quick decisions, makes good decisions, I think.
Sure, absolutely. So I mean, that kind of sums up, I think, what we've got to look out for them offensively.
Can I put one more out there into the airspace?
Yeah, I was about to say, if you guys have any defensive matchups, or just other matchups you think we need to hit, go for it.
So Justin Houston has played in 8 games this year, and he has been lining up as the edge on the right side of their defense, which means he's Dan Moore's matchup. And he has 9 sacks. If you guys want to run the math on that, that would be over 18 sacks in a full season, which granted he's not healthy. But this could get very, very ugly very fast if we don't send help over there, because those sack numbers are legit. Like you can go search up Justin Houston on Twitter. It'll have just about every sack on there. These are legit wins against tackles that are better than Dan Moore. So this could be a very rough week for our buddy over there. Jeremy's best pal on the left side.
Best pal? That is a reach, sir. That is a reach.
I think
my consistent punching bag.
By the way, I think over the years of probably pretty hardcore since about 2004, been following the draft and like getting invested in emotionally the prospects and whatever. And I think Justin Houston is top 5 player that I was not just disappointed but pissed that the Steelers didn't draft. And I feel pretty vindicated that dude's had some ups and downs in his career, but he's good. So it's like, at least I didn't miss on him entirely. Yeah, I feel like I feel a little bit that way about Stanley. Like if Stanley comes back and can play at a fairly high level, that sort of negates one of the better parts of the Steelers defense right now, which is Alex Highsmith, which I had to give a shout out to him. Those of you who follow the show, and my mantra about the edge rushers is guys who don't test at a freak level for edge rushers have extremely rarely made it to double-digit sacks in a season, and those who do test at a freaky level have almost to a person actually made it to 10 sacks. So it's a real sort of like delineator for that position. And although I really liked Alex Highsmith from the time he was like a sophomore in college, I was a little bit disappointed in his testing, and it made me think it was riskier bet for him to be able to get to be a double-digit sack guy, and for him to get that the way he has this season, which is to say, yeah, a lot of that production was when TJ Watt was on the field on the other side, but he has really maximized his athletic talent with a lot of hard work and effort. And I just want to say shout out to him because, I may have been worried about him making to fruition and even thinking about maybe it was worth drafting an edge to replace him this year. So he has definitely proven something this year. I hope that he can continue to do that. But anyway, so yeah, this Ron Stanley, Alex Highsmith was going to be my other matchup if it came to fruition. If it doesn't, I don't know. But Justin Houston and Dan Moore, that feels like class is about to be in session.
Yeah, I mean, Corey, you're definitely right. I mean, of course this game could get ugly. This is a Pittsburgh, Baltimore game. I mean, these games aren't explosive. They're, nose breaking, type games. I mean, just ask Big Ben. I mean, these games have been for last 2 decades have been which puncher is left standing last. So, I mean, I definitely think it's going to be a rough game. I don't think we're going to be able to run the ball super effectively. I think we might be able to do it occasionally, but I don't think it'll be consistent this week. The one matchup I was going to, obviously I was going to bring up Roquan Smith. Since he's come to the Ravens, he's been all over the field, made tons of plays. They got him for an absolute steal, which still pisses me off to this day. But I mean, he's a guy that's going to be all over the field. He's not, superb in coverage, but I mean, he's a guy that's going to be able to get to the outside. I don't see too many cutbacks being super effective this week because he's a guy that comes crashing down. He does not miss lanes and he does not miss tackles. So I think that's a guy Steelers need to make sure they get a hat on, or he could take over this game fairly quickly. Last one, I will say, whoever is lined up on Marcus Peters, you must win your assignment. I think, that guy used to be a good corner, and I think he's a shell of what he used to be, honestly. I've watched the Ravens multiple times, this year where they've been on the local broadcast for me being here in Indianapolis. He has looked so unimpressive at times. It's remarkable for a guy who, I think just maybe 3 or 4 years ago, people have said, oh, Marcus Peters, top 10 corner in this league. I'm not sure he's a top 20 corner anymore, in all honesty. His game has really fallen off a cliff. So whoever is
it almost feels like they tried to convince him to worry less about trying to get picks and to play more consistent coverage, but it doesn't really suit his mentality. He's just all about getting picks, really.
Yeah, he's a gambler. And it's shown time and time again. Guys have just outquicked him too this year, that they have separated from Peters. And I think we have got to take advantage of that, whether it's Deontay Johnson, whether it's George Pickens. We have got to create some favorable matchups so we can move the ball through the air this week. Obviously, we need to go fire move, but
any other receivers aside those two, Jeremy?
Well, I don't think we should feature Steven Sims by any means.
But hey, at one point into the third quarter of last week's game, I believe Gunnar Olszewski had more touches than George Pickens. That's all you need to know. Hey, I have a matchup on this side of the ball, though.
Sure.
And that is the Steelers offense and offensive coordinator against the second half. It feels like several weeks in a row that they come out and you're like, oh, they look pretty good in this opening drive. And it's like, even throughout the full first half, you're like, okay, this is it's a pretty effective offense. And I like what they're mixing it up and, whatever. And then they get to the second half and it's like nothing happens. It's the damnedest thing. And like to some degree, it's because the defense has given up a lot of long possessions in the second half. And they have not done the offense any favors of turning over the ball or quick drives so the offense gets more opportunities. But still, there hasn't been a lot of action in the second half of any of these games recently. So that to me is if you're going to beat the Ravens, they're probably not going to let you. They're probably not going to let you run all over them in the first half. So you're probably going to have to be a little better in the second half. And I'm not sure that they're what to expect in the second half this week. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead,
One thing I want to add back on the Germans, because when he started talking about it, it just reminded me. It was a meme since George Pickens was drafted to get ready for the Marcus Peters, George Pickens battle.
Oh yeah,
both of them are real physical. They'll throw jabs into the throats and all that. So I think it makes more sense for Marlon Humphrey to get the George Pickens assignment. I think he's a bit more physical, but that's something to keep an eye on if those two end up on the same side of the field, because they both are that aggressive on the field.
Well, this is the first time we're seeing Marlon Humphrey without having Juju on the other side, isn't it? So that was always for him. So it feels like Pickens would be something closer to that. Anyway.
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it's worth mentioning this is Kenny Pickett's first Baltimore game. I mean, if he really is the guy of the future, people are going to remember this game.
Yeah, at home too. So,
and even if he doesn't do anything great and they win, they'll still remember how great he was.
Right.
There it goes. Hey, who was the corner that Pickens got in the big fight with
in college?
Georgia Tech corner. It was somebody that I interviewed actually. I think in Pasadena.
Was it Swilling?
Somebody his father was an NFL player too.
Swilling.
Yeah,
Swilling.
Trey Swilling. Yeah, I was just waiting for that. Waiting for that. Imagine if in the NFL should have never happened to be the one to be like, that's the one.
He's with the Saints.
I don't know if you ever saw that fight, but it was amazing. Actually, I think Pickens grabbed his face mask and threw him into the stands. It was that kind of a fight.
Oh boy, we don't need any future Marshawn Lattimore, Mike Evans types incidents.
It was kind of like that. That's exactly what I
those two have stolen the show when it's come to interdivisional feuds really over the last 5-6 years. So to your point, hopefully that doesn't become a thing, because Marlon Humphrey's not going anywhere for a long time either, and neither will George Pickens. With that being said, there are some other games around the NFL this week, gentlemen.
What?
I know, shocker. There are a few good ones out there. One of the first ones I want to start off with is the Jets are traveling to Buffalo. Buffalo is favored by 9, and this is the Mike White. It's the Mike freaking White led Jets. Corey, we'll let you start off with this one. What are your thoughts?
I've been a sucker for the underdog stories this year, like the Fighting Jeff Saturdays, things of that nature. But
things of that nature. Okay, Mike. Don't interrupt you while you're working.
Josh Allen is Josh Allen. So I don't think the defense is really cut for him yet. I think maybe another offseason and Robert Saleh getting more of his guys in there could, prevent Josh Allen from doing Superman things. But I think the Jets are a better offense with Mike White. I just don't think it's enough to overcome the Bills. I think they're still definitely a top 2 team in the AFC. So I'm going the Bills. What's the spread? How much do I need to?
9. Buffalo by 9.
Oh shit. I'll take the Jets to cover then. I think they'll fight hard.
It does have the feel of a backdoor cover, and the Jets, beat Buffalo earlier this year.
Right.
So yeah, it's not impossible for them to win again. But I kind of feel like it's more likely that they'll split the season series, and that the Jets may keep it close enough to cover. So yeah, I guess I would say Buffalo to win and the Jets to cover that 9.
Yeah, this is one I think we're all going to agree on. Don't get me wrong. I think the Jets have been better under Mike White. They played some cupcake team 2 weeks ago, on Mike White's first start, he put up big numbers. Jets won pretty heavily that day. I can't remember who they played, but this past week against a better Minnesota team, there were some inconsistencies. He did hit some open players, but kind of feel like it's the same thing this week. I think teams are going to start to figure out Zonovan Knight a little bit more. That they just don't have the same explosivity factor in the running game they had when they had Brees Hall.
Explosivity.
Yeah, Brees Hall. Oh yeah, I know. I mixed in a big word. Sorry.
Explosivity. I like it.
But
it's very erudite of you.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to start introducing a big word of the week on the podcast.
Indubitably.
Yeah, indubitably. Yeah. But as long as Josh Allen doesn't try to do too much superhuman things, I think that's when actually they've been at their worst this year, is when he's tried to do too much. Just take what they give you. And I think, Buffalo ends up winning this game. I do like the Jets to cover, though. Let's move on to another good matchup. And I can't believe I'm saying this again, but Minnesota headed to Detroit in what should be a very fun game to watch. Detroit.
Wait, before you say anything about the spread, what's Minnesota's record?
They're 10-2, I think.
They're 10-2. What is Detroit's record?
I think they've won 5 games now.
Corey, do you know what the spread in this game is?
Detroit by 1.
It is Detroit is Minnesota is 10-2, and they're the underdog in a game. It's incredible, right. Actually. That's more disrespect than I've even given them all season. To be honest.
According to MGM, and that I go to MGM to look all these up or whatever, on the day we record. Obviously, right now they've got Detroit by 2.5. We'll let you start out with this one.
Oh, I've made a lot of. I've done pretty well on my picks this year. Minnesota has just killed me. Whenever I pick them to win, they lose. They win. It's like they're just killing me. So
you can tag me in on that because I pick with you every week.
Somehow, though, I don't know what you're doing in the picks in our CBS sports picks, though, because you seem to be missing 2 or 3 games that I'm getting every week, which worries me about you. I don't know what you're doing in your off time. I think someone before this, I think when week 1, when we were talking about the Detroit Lions, that I said I felt like their goal for this season was to build to a climax over the course of the season, and that by the end of the year, they'd feel like they had everything but a quarterback, and then go get themselves one next year and be a real contender. And for a couple of weeks there, it was like, I don't know if they're going to be able to get to that level this year, but they do feel like they're now on that path where they believe in what they're doing. And that kind of team is really dangerous, especially at home and especially against the division opponent. I will take the Detroit Lions to win this game by a field goal and cover the spread against Minnesota Vikings, even though they're 10-2.
Corey,
big shock. I'm going with Will here. I'm taking the Lions to win and cover. I think the Lions are a lot closer to a 6-win team than the Vikings are to an 11-win team, if that makes any sense. I think the Lions are much more deserving of a win this weekend than the Vikings are.
Deserving?
I think they are deserving. Yes, they play so hard. But I'm being serious though. So they get a QB. However many picks they have in the draft, damn near every single one of them should be on the defensive side of the ball. Like they just need a QB, and they need about a linebacker, 3D lineman, and like 3 DBs, because it's rough sledding over there. But I don't think they'll put a 40 ball on them like they have 3 times this year with Jared Goff at QB, which is part of the reason why I don't excuse Matt Canada for his actions. But I think I'm going to go the Lions to win by 4 or 5. I think it's going to be close, but I'm taking them to win.
Fair enough, gentlemen. I'm going to be the contrarian. I like the Vikings this week. They just find ways to win ball games. It's inexplicable, really. I know another big word. I saw that grin. But I mean,
5 syllables.
okay.
Man, your use of
I'm
these
not counting, but
your use of vocabulary is insidious this week. Amazing.
But
It's profound.
Minnesota is the team that finds a way to win ball games. I didn't think they had a shot when they went into Buffalo and won, the in the most ludicrous way to ever win a football game. They have just found ways to, whether you want to say outlast teams, I think that's the word for a few times this year. They've just found ways to hold on to leads. And I think the biggest difference maker in this game, his name is Justin Jefferson. The kid is just unreal. And with a defense that, Corey mentioned, Detroit still needs a lot. I think that's the difference in this ball game. I think Minnesota's got a little bit more on defense. I think Vikings are going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to pass the ball. I just see them as the more potent offense. And this is the game that TJ Hawkins has said, screw you, Detroit, for dealing me to an interdivision rival. Thank you for getting me out of Detroit with a much brighter future. so I like Minnesota this week in that game. So let's move on to a game that I didn't think I was going to talk about this week, but I can't believe that Tom Brady pulled off another comeback. Tampa Bay is headed to San Francisco, which, before this action started on Sunday, I thought, man, San Fran's going to run this team out of the building. Well, now they're down to Brock Purdy at quarterback. No more Jimmy G. Tom Brady coming off a comeback. Will, how do you like this one? Right now, San Fran's favored by 3.5 at home.
I'm gonna say some words that I never thought I'd hear myself say. I was no. Brock Purdy played pretty well, actually.
I'm guessing you did not have a very high opinion of Brock Purdy at one point.
He was someone that I really wanted to like him as a prospect, and I felt like every game that I watched him play, just just collapsed, and it just got worse and worse. I feel like he had a college career that snowballed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I felt like actually he played some really sort of cerebral football for someone that doesn't have any experience, basically, that came in as he did. So whatever they managed to do to him to get him prepared, I felt that he did an amazing job. But remember, I was talking about Kenny Pickett when he came into his first game earlier this year. It's a lot easier to come in as the number 2 with no, concept of what you're supposed to be doing, and they're just trying to figure out the 3 plays you know how to run. So it's a little different when now, like teams saw you last week, and now they're going to try to stuff your head full of the whole game plan. I think it's going to be a bit harder for him this week. And Tampa Bay is, strangely enough, I know they're only 500, but they're leading their division, and it just feels like, they're a little bit too good on defense, and they have Tom Brady, who is capable of doing what he did last week. So I like Tampa Bay to win this game. It might be pretty close, but I like the Bucs.
All right, Corey.
I mean, Brock Purdy looking good in an NFL game. I barely thought he was like a decent college quarterback. Like, you watch him sometimes, and I think I've said it on here before, the bozo gene. Like, where someone just has an innate motive to do stupid things, and that was Brock Purdy in college. But for whatever reason, he's did solid his first game. And I think San Fran's just a better team, top to bottom. I don't think the Bucs play very good football right now. I think that's really the only way to put it. Like, in the same way that I don't think the Vikings are very good. Like, they don't play great football, but they win games, and they have Justin Jefferson. I think the Bucs have a lot of guys, but they just play bad football. Like, their coaching decisions are kind of dumb sometimes. They make dumb mistakes. I think San Fran's just a little more complete as a a football team, and I think they'll play hard for Brock Purdy. I mean, he's fucking Mr. Irrelevant. Like, I'm sure that's a storyline they love. Like, oh yeah, underdogs. So
That's all I've heard this week, Corey. Mr. Irrelevant starting at quarterback.
Yeah, no, it's Duck Hodges,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm going the 49ers by 14. I think it's a big win. I think they run the ball.
I think the 49ers are a real contender. I just something about this week with the backup quarterback.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a very close game. I like San Fran in this one just because I feel like they're the more complete team, and that offense seems to be so quarterback friendly. It's a bunch of easy throws that they're not going to ask Brock Purdy to, push the deep ball very often. They're going to give him a lot of easy run after the catch type throws with the best run after the catch guys in the league with, whether it's McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, even. I mean, just all three of those guys are so good after the catch. Their offensive line's playing better as the year's gone on. Their defense has been unreal at times this year. I think this past week was the first time they've let an opponent score in the second half in almost a month. Just ridiculous things that team's doing. And I just think, even though it's Brock freaking Purdy, a guy who after his freshman year in college, people were hyping up to be like the next great thing for some reason. I don't know why, but
The next Drew Brees.
Huh?
The next Drew Brees. That was
I was very say there was some very high praise after that freshman year, but I think he's accomplished enough. I think he's smart enough. I think they do enough to win this game. I don't think it'll be by 14. I don't think it'll be by that much, but
hey, real quickly, you talk about yards after catch being a big factor with all those San Francisco guys. The antidote to that is it's linebackers and cornerbacks who can tackle. And this is an opponent that, if there's one thing that they can do, usually, I mean, they've had some real off games this year, but Tampa Bay is very good at that.
Yep, that's another good point. Well, last point I'll make is Tristan Wirfs won't be playing this week. That's just another offensive lineman that's out for Tampa Bay. I just think that's another thing that just kills that team with, their momentum to try to, make a deep push into the playoffs. They're very likely to win their division, which isn't saying much, but just that's such a downturn against one of the best defense, if not the best defense in football right now. So I like San Fran in that game. Not a ton of other games I think that are going to be super close, unless one of you thinks Houston's going to cover Dallas's 17-point favorite right now. I mean, good Lord.
It might be double that.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, you know what? There's one more division game we'll get to before our 5-star matchup. Cleveland is visiting Cincinnati. Cincinnati's favored by 6. Deshaun Watson's first game back did not look too great by any means. Corey, take this one away, sir.
I don't think the Browns have the utility to stop the Bengals. Their safeties aren't very good. The Bengals can take the top off of defense. Their run defense isn't very good. Bengals can run the ball. And the one thing that the Bengals do on defense is they might not be like incredibly good at rushing the passer, but for the most part, they make you like throw contested balls. Like they make you hold it, they make you throw to coverage. And Deshaun Watson looked bad. Like he did not look good at all. Like me and Jeremy talked about it last week. We thought Jacoby Brissett would have looked better than he did in his first game. And I mean, that seemed to be the case to me. I mean, tough to be objective when we already had that point of view, but I didn't see many.
Brissett, very good season, like it was sort of predictable. It was like, a guy hasn't played football in however many years. I don't know how anybody expected him, even people who think he's a good quarterback in a vacuum, expected him to step in after not playing for a couple of years and suddenly be the old guy that he was. So, yeah, I think might take a little while. Sorry to interrupt you.
You're good. And I mean, I don't even care about the spread because I know I'm taking the Bengals over. And I'm going to say the Bengals blow the doors off this game. I'm going to say like a 24-point win. I think this is going to be one of those games where their offense really explodes. They've been playing good football, and I just don't think the Browns are equipped at all to stop them on defense, and the offense just I think they're going to get behind you where they can't get the run game going.
Right. Line was my bad. Line is Cincinnati's favored by 6. Will, what do you think, bud?
Yeah, I mean, I picked the Bengals to win this game in the pool. If Deshaun Watson suddenly like finds the magic elixir, and that last weekend was just a sort of like a shakedown cruise, but now he's really going to be Deshaun Watson at his peak. That they could stay in this, keep this game close into the fourth quarter, just because Cincinnati has a way of letting teams hang around a little bit. But yeah, I think the Bengals are sort of ramping up into a contender form, and they are probably not going to lose a game against a dysfunctional Browns team right now.
Will, you almost took the exact words I was going to use. The Bengals are starting their playoff run now, and they're getting hot at the right time, just like they did last year. This team's playing very good. They took down Kansas City again. I couldn't believe that, to be honest. I thought, there's no way Joe Burrow and crew steal one against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes again, and that's exactly what they did.
Hey, 3 in a row, baby.
Yeah,
they have that team's number.
3 in a row. That's
Logan Wilson
beating him 3 times in 2022. That's insane when you think about it. So 3 times 1 calendar year, let alone. Clearly the Bengals are on a roll. I like them. They're going to be getting Joe Mixon back this week. Samaje Perine been playing great. Jamar Chase looked like his old self last week. And Bengals have a very underrated defense. Doesn't have a lot of star power, but they play really good for the most part. I'm with Corey on this one. I think this is a game where, Cleveland is still figuring things out with Deshaun Watson. And yes, I was one of those fools that started Deshaun Watson on his fantasy team last week because he's been sitting on my bench for over 700 calendar days. And I was
you can't just toss that guy back in, or right. Just whip him out and expect him to perform. You got to massage his way into.
Oh boy! Oh,
because
boy. We should have known
release.
That was coming.
He's got to work on his release. He's got to find his touch.
Geez, I'm gonna have to label this episode explicit again. But yeah, I just think Cincinnati runs away with this one. I don't think Cleveland can stop them no matter what they want to do on offense. I just think Cleveland's defense is that bad, and Cincinnati can do whatever they want on offense. So I like Cincinnati in the points there. And that gets us to our 5-star matchup of the week. Baltimore Ravens headed to our Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh is favored by 2.5. Corey, we're going to let you start out with this one.
You guys can have all your fancy words that you want with 5 syllables. I just need 3 2-syllable words. Pittsburgh Steelers standard. We're going to come in, physical game. We're going to try and run the ball. It's not going to work. We're going to get some TJ Watt sacks, and we're going to win on a Chris Boswell field goal. Let's call it 13-16. 16-13. Gotta have the Steelers first.
Boswell is back this week, and that's not something I heard. So
that was something I was going to bring up. Both Boswell can be activated and play this week, and William Jackson can actually return this week too.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw it out there.
That's not happening. How'd you like to be Matthew Wright? Right, is his name?
Yep.
He's gonna make some money, so.
I know, but my point is, dude was, I know he grazed a couple of uprights and whatever, but it was actually, pretty money the last couple of weeks, and now he's just like, thank you very much, see you later. It's a tough gig. I just feel like it's sort of law of averages this game, that it's, Tyler Huntley is probably going to play better than he did the last time against the Steelers. and the Steelers offense is probably he's gonna have a little bit different time, a harder time getting traction compared to the last couple of weeks. And you say a couple of TJ Watt sacks. He didn't look like he could do anything last week. So I'm not counting on TJ Watt being the difference maker in this game. Minkah Fitzpatrick, maybe. But I think that tight end matchup with the Steelers linebackers, safeties, middle of the field defenders, and play action with the run game, that triumvirate, the Ravens are going to have just a little bit more than the Steelers do this week. I like similar score, 16-13, but in the Ravens' favor.
All right. That leaves me, and I am very torn on this game because, I feel like Pittsburgh's created some momentum here, but at the same time, this is the first opponent I expect this to, get punched in the mouth a little bit. And I'm kind of with you on this one, Will. I think this is where, we see some mistakes being made by a young quarterback, just some mistakes in general. This front seven's much better than what we've come up against recently. I think Baltimore ends up winning this like 17-13. I think you guys are, right on the money as far as about how many points are going to be scored this game. I think it's going to be few and far between. I just don't think Pittsburgh turns some of these scores into touchdowns like we've seen recently. I think we settle for a lot of field goals, whether that's, Matthew Wright for one more week or Chris Boswell. I just don't see us converting the same, even though, I highlighted some matchups I think that work in Pittsburgh's favor. I just don't see it this week. This is the week where I think we see that really heavy dose of the running game, which Atlanta used to almost come back this past week. And I think I'm on board with you guys. I think Huntley is even more dangerous than Lamar Jackson in some sense against our defense because of the quick decision making and the ability to put the ball where it needs to go. So I like Baltimore this week. I hate to say it, but I think Baltimore's got a little bit of an edge in a few different areas this week. 17-13. I've got Baltimore covering the spread here technically. So that being said,
if Tyler Huntley were the quarterback of Atlanta last week, the Falcons would have won that game. Like that to me that was a game where there's just a quarterback problem, just doomed the Falcon. And I mean Marcus Mariota is perfectly fine placeholder, but he needed to make that 2 or 3 plays in the game that he just couldn't get together. So right. I feel this is a week where if Tyler Huntley plays the way that he did the last time against the Steelers, then Corey's prediction is going to look pretty smart.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, and we play each other so much every year, twice a year, hell, sometimes even 3. We're so familiar with, what we like to do. I think Baltimore kind of sees that same thing that like the Bengals did a few weeks ago, where they're like, we saw that play coming from a mile away. I think you just see some more of that where Baltimore sniffs out some of what our offense is trying to do, even with our improved running game. So I've got Baltimore 17-13. Well, gentlemen, thank you again for another episode here on the SteelersFury.com podcast. Hopefully it's a good game this week. It's going to be another slugfest. We're used to these types of things. So here we go, Steelers. Try to get out of this game healthy. I'd say that's the biggest thing. Let's not lose TJ Watt to, another aggravated injury or something. That's my game. Kind of coming out of this game healthy would be great. So
we're on the road to 500. Can't afford injuries.
Let's hope we can get a look at John Harbaugh. Or is it Jim Harbaugh? John Harbaugh. Let's hope we can get a look at John Harbaugh looking apoplectic on the sideline to throw another 5-syllable word at you.
Gosh, this is going to be a
it's
trend.
It's only a 4-syllable, 5-syllable word, but you get the idea.
Yeah, we're going to have a challenge going forward. Guarantee it. Thank you again, gentlemen. Have a good night. Go Steelers. Hopefully can pull out a close win. Go Steelers.
Go Steelers.